we've got it going. Yay. Alright. So today's going to be a really short stream. Hopefully some of you will have time to jump in and join us. It is the final Wednesday of the month, so we're going to be going over a random Native American tribe. I came up with a list of 12 random ones that I just randomly chose from a list of current and extinct tribes, and then from there choosing in a way like the followers can choose. The last time it was voting on the it was the Crayola names, and then this time I just chose a random viewer, which was Sand Panda. Sand Panda is not Send It Sam. I'm horrible. Your nickname gonna get me in trouble. Send It Sam. Chose number 7. I just said number from 1 to 11, and they chose 7, of course. Of course. So, yeah, this week it's the Modoc. Sorry if I butcher the name. Modoc. I'm gonna say Modoc. The Modoc. Okay, let's go ahead and get started and try to get past the snafu of names that I did. I'm kind of embarrassed now. Okay. So when I try to do full screen presentation on my second screen for this, it doesn't really it wants to take up the whole thing, and that's not what I'm wanting. Okay. So, because I actually have 2 PowerPoints. One is the one you're seeing, and one with a little bit more notes and detail that I can give, but you don't really want to read each slide. Okay, so the Modoc. The Modoc are a tribe currently divided between Oregon and Oklahoma. And you might think, what the heck? That's kind of really far, isn't it? It is, and their history, it makes sense why they're kind of split between those 2 locations. They are part of either 2 federally recognized tribes, the Klamath tribes in Oregon and the Modoc tribe of Oklahoma. So originally from present-day northeastern California and central Oregon, their territory was approximately 5,000 square miles. They were seasonal hunter-gatherers. Spring they spent at the Lost River, consisting of groups of domed huts made of tule reeds. During this time, they would fish spawning runs, as well as gather bird eggs, roots, and berries. In the summer, they moved to higher elevations south of the lava beds, which is now a national monument. Earth lodges, as many as 20 in each village, were readied for the severe winter. So they would travel to these villages. During this time, the adults would repair their hand tools and baskets, while the younger members of the village listened to elders recount the history of the tribe in legends and song. Sorry, just got interrupted. um, so yeah, they would tell their history, their spiritual beliefs through stories and songs. So now we have a picture. This is split up into present day counties, but they are primarily here in southern Oregon, if you didn't know what state that was. And then you have Oklahoma, where they were forced to congregate up in this northeastern region. So they have records from rock art dating back approximately 14,000 years, and if I didn't really do research into their oral history, but if you were to do research into it, I'm sure a lot of the stories date very, very far, like thousands of years likely. They were very culturally unique to the area. You could tell, so if you took other tribes, you could tell this was the Modoc, you know. They were singular in their culture. Occasionally formed war parties to drive out unwelcome visitors or raid neighboring tribes. So I wish we would talk about this a little bit more, and even incorporate in our general education the history of Native American tribes, instead of just studying history when they met the either European settlers or U.S. settlers as they expanded westward. It would be really interesting to kind of get an account of things, because there's that kind of trope of Native Americans being one with nature and peaceful, and they were people. They had wars, they had little scuffles, they had enemies, and I think it would be really interesting to learn about stuff like that. And the problem is, if you pass your history through song or stories, some of that gets lost, or you might end up with a little exaggeration or details added that weren't there, or lost that were there, just because of the whole telephone phenomenon. If you guys ever played that game growing up, there was always someone who purposefully messed it up, though. I don't know if you guys had that. I remember there were some kids who purposely messed it up, but if you don't have someone like that just trying to screw up the game, things can get lost or added. And when you tell a story over and over, you give flair to it, you know? It would get boring if you didn't. Okay, next. So, the war is the Modoc War, but California's first governor, Peter Burnett, declared war of extermination to be waged upon natives. The state legislature appropriated $500,000 for militia to kill the native people of California. Yes, that's a lot of money funded to just go out and kill people with random militias. Not a very good time in U.S. history, but important to know. The U.S. funded this. Valentine's Day Treaty of 1864 was an agreement to live in peace and friendship with one another and all of the settlers in the region. So the monarch didn't like when people would come onto their territory and, you know, take their resources, push them out. They would steal the supplies that they took. They would even steal supplies that they brought with them. They were invading their area. But that's not all the time. They did, as that was just like a phenomenon that happens. But a lot of the Modoc actually incorporated the cultural practices, the speech, the names of the U.S. settlers, and started to assimilate their culture pretty quickly. They probably saw the technological benefits of doing so, and they would actually trade a lot with these settlers or trappers and traders. During those early times, the Easterners would travel to the West and they would do prospecting, gather furs, all kinds of minerals and such, and they would haul them back to the East Coast. But Modoc would trade with them for things like guns and horses and anything that would have been valuable to them. The Valentine's Day Treaty was not accepted by the U.S. federal government, and they decided to negotiate a new treaty through their Oregon Indian Agency, which was the Treaty of Council Grove. This treaty would terminate and extinguish the tribal land rights of the Native Americans and establish a reservation. So the Valentine's Day Treaty came in and got people to kind of, let's chill, let's just live in harmony. But then the U.S. government was like, no, we're taking your land and you have to live on this reservation now. This reservation was actually the land of the, the Klamath, which was historically their enemy. So they were forced to go to their enemy's land and be on a reservation with them. And the Modoc War took place between 1872 and 1873. The warriors, with their wives, children, retreated to the nearby lava beds. The leader of the revolt was Captain Jack. Him, with 57 men, withstood approximately 1,000 men from the California governor. 6 Modoc's lives were lost by direct combat, while the U.S. Army lost 45. That is amazing. These people were determined. They knew what they were doing. They were obviously very skilled in combat and war tactics, and they knew their area. And they lost just 57 men against 1,000. That's amazing. That's some skills. But in June 1st, 1873, when the war ended, Captain Jack and 5 of his warriors are the only natives to be tried by a military commission for war crimes. So I didn't find details of the events of this war in my brief research that I did, but it sounds like it would be something worth looking into. They were tried for war crimes, and it could just be that they got their butts handed to them and they wanted to kind of throw the book at them, or they could have employed some pretty brutal tactics to fight for their land and their freedom, basically. But seems pretty hardcore. So here we have, sorry guys, it's like I wanted it to do full screen and it wouldn't do full screen, so just bear with me on the little dotted lines and everything. Okay, so like I said, when the Eastern fur trappers and miners started to arrive, the Modoc incorporated their culture, their language pretty quickly, and so they adopted their names a lot of times. So we have Captain Jack here, and a few of his like big name followers: Bogus Charlie, Hookah Jim, Scar-Faced Charlie, and Shacknasty Jim. He looks like he's just done with people's, he looks pissed, which, yeah, they seem like a pretty interesting group to have been able to accomplish what they did. And really interesting names. Scarface Charlie. Okay. So they were seasonal hunter-gatherers, fishermen, as I stated previously. When contact was made, the Modoc bartered with fur traders for guns and horses, but were eventually ousted by the farmers and settlers, which is what the whole war took place over, them being pushed onto a reservation with their historical enemies. They embraced many of the settlers' ways and eventually began to wear westernized clothing, adopting the language, names, and cultural practices. 1864 ceded their lands to the U.S. and signed reservation treaties, agreeing to live alongside the clan of Indians, like I said, their traditional enemy. Then we have a picture that I found of a Winema Riddle, Toby Winema Riddle. I like this picture just because it shows a female in the natural Modoc garb. Not natural, traditional Modoc garb, that's what I meant. Okay, so as many of you probably learned, relocation was a big thing with Native Americans. As the U.S. expanded west, they wanted that land, they wanted the farming rights, the mineral rights, everything, but they had all these pesky Native Americans in the way. So they decided to remove them and force them into areas like Oklahoma. October 12th, 1873, 155 Modoc were shipped to Quapaw Agency in Indian Territory. Then in June of 1874, 4,000 acres were purchased for them from the Eastern Shawnee. So during the time that they were there, the 6 months they were at the Quapaw Agency, they struggled. The agency wasn't prepared to receive nearly 200 Modoc. They were just basically loaded up into carriages quickly. They weren't allowed to bring any of their belongings or anything. They just had blankets, basically, and made a 5,000 mile trek or something like that to Oklahoma. And when the agency got them, they weren't ready, they didn't have supplies for them, so the Modocs had a really tough go of it when they first got there. Finally, June 1864, they got 4,000 acres, which kind of started to look up, but the first years were difficult as well. They suffered many sicknesses and hardships due to the corrupt and cruel administration of Agent Jones at Quapaw Agency. By 1879, 54 deaths had reduced the Modoc population to 99. By the time of the Modoc allotment in 1891, so that's 12 years later, only 68 were left. Many of whom were born after removal, so after their parents were scooped up from Oregon, Northern California, and forced to move to Oklahoma. Most of them were already dead from the illness, just how hard it was to restart over there, and probably just depression. I mean, that would be a very heartbreaking thing to go through. They rapidly assimilated the ways of the area, of the white settlers there in order to survive, cultivated their own land, and assured their own survival by improving the conditions and productivity of their crops and livestock. So they had a really tough go of it. They were swooped up, a lot of them died, but these guys are tough. They decided to take that 4,000 acres and work it. They ensured their own survival and were willing to put in that work and adapt, which seems to be a pretty big characteristic of the Modoc. Okay, so for the Klamath tribes, as I said, only about 160 of the Modoc were scooped up and forced to move to Oklahoma. The rest stayed. They were the ones who didn't actually follow Captain Jack in their war, and they were forced onto the Klamath Reservation. In 1954, the Klamath tribes' federal recognition was terminated, which is a really big deal, because if you don't have federal recognition, you're not going to be able to get any financial aid or aid that, like medical aid. You're not going to actually, part of my job is dealing with things like NAGPRA, where if Native American remains are located, they are to be repatriated to the tribe from which they came from. And it's only for federally recognized tribes. So if your tribe is not federally recognized, you will not be able to receive the remains of your ancestors or the rights to the cultural material that may be excavated or located at any point. And a lot of times, a closely related, federally recognized tribe might stand in proxy for them, but if you're not federally recognized, you lose a lot of those rights and abilities. So this was a big deal. After a legal struggle for several decades, they regained status as a federally recognized tribe in 1986. In fact, a restoration celebration is held every August in Oregon to kind of celebrate this event. So today, after being split up and going to war and surviving the war of extermination on Native Americans, they're still alive and thriving today. They don't have a large population, as you can see. 600 live in Klamath County, Oregon, in and around their ancestral homelands, whereas 200 live in Oklahoma on a small reservation in Ottawa County. These in Oklahoma are the descendants of Captain Jack's band and those who actually had a large they had a large what's the word part they had a large part in the war, the Modoc War. Part was not the word I was looking for, but it works. You know what I'm saying. Okay, so yeah, that's them today. I had never heard of the restoration celebration. It might be interesting. There's a lot of celebrations. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a bit of a homebody. And if anything this past year has taught me is I am much more of a homebody than I realized. Anyways, so thank you guys for tuning in. As I said, it was going to be a very short stream today. I just wanted to cover the Native American tribe of the month, the Modoc. I will see you guys next Wednesday. I may be playing around with something new, new idea. We'll see. Kind of just started poking into it. We'll see if it's actually produces anything. But yeah, see you guys next Wednesday at 6 p.m. on, what am I? Pacific. On Pacific. You guys have a great